Awesome. So thank you, Marie Chantal. That was, I like your enthusiasm and your particle wave. That's a fun image. I'll just submit. So I'm Lindsay Bisson. I am a Deputy Director at the Department of Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. I'm responsible for space and marine industrial policy, and recently COVID times, I'm working on retail, restaurants, and fitness and real estate industrial policy. So it's a bit of a jack of all trades at the moment. I saw the list of some people that are attending today, and I have, I appreciate Alex Rubin's enthusiasm to think that I know something about shipbuilding, but I know definitely some of you have a lot more experience in this area than I do, from probably more an operational side, but hopefully I can provide to you a bit of a Government Canada lens, my interactions with other departments, what our lens is when we're looking at it from my department, from the economic point of view, and again, how can we get industry, government, academia, associations, everyone together to try and really advance the marine assets. I'm not sure it's really fair to say a 10, 20-year vision. I know things happen a little bit slower, not necessarily slower, but they take a long time in this sector. So it's a little bit tricky, but we'll see where we can go in this time frame. So next slide, please. So in the next, I guess, 15 minutes, I'm just going to start with, again, how I define marine assets, or where I can speak most intelligently about marine assets. I'm going to look at some key stats, looking back a bit, the evolution of shipbuilding in Canada very quickly, and then looking at the current status of, some things happening in Canada, international scan, and then where the Government of Canada initiatives lie, our priorities, and then from our own studies, where we see key trends in innovation technologies, opportunities, and then just a general vision for Canada's marine assets. Next slide, please. So in terms of marine assets, my world is Canadian shipbuilding and the industrial marine sector. So marine assets at large, I completely acknowledge, includes, as Marie Chantal said, shipyards, dry docks, ports and harbors, offshore energy assets, and vessels. For the purpose of today, I'm going to be talking just to limit the scope to vessels. You can't really have a marine infrastructure without vessels. You can, but it wouldn't be very exciting. But that's generally where our data has focused. And again, they're absolutely essential for vessels. Ships and boats are essential for the marine economy. So again, when you think of shipbuilding, you probably think of just large ships, and you would be partially correct. Behind large ships, there's there's sizes of ships, there's boats, but also there's a really complex value chain behind that, and that some of the people I know on this call today are part of. And it includes designs, the development, integration of platform and mission systems such as radar and navigation aids, vessel construction, and then also post-delivery repair, refit, and maintenance. And so that's actually the ISS in-service support on the fourth circle there. And the sector also comprises of ocean technology products, which are used alongside vessels as auxiliary systems. So that's kind of the world that I'll be talking about today. Next slide, please. So you may or may not be aware, but ISET, in conjunction with Stats Canada, produces a State of the Marine report biannually. And some of you may have contributed to it. And so we look at where the state of the sector. And then in the last few years, we've really noticed a lot of growth in the industry that's been driven by R&D and exports, which are both heavily dominated by SMEs, which is not probably a big surprise to anybody. In particular, Canada has a lot of strength in naval systems, and they're driving export activity. And 80% of systems in Canada actually are exported to foreign navies. So shipbuilding is a small piece of Canada's larger blue economy, but it provides the assets necessary for, as Marie Chantal mentioned, for fishing, for shipping, and other ocean-related activities. ISET, in terms of industrial policy, we really care about exports. How do you become a competitive economic nation? It's exports. And how do you do that if you're in the marine economy, or if you're working in the marine sector? That is, you need government to be a first customer or a customer, because it's really difficult to sell to foreign navies when your own navy maybe doesn't do that. So that's something that we're aware of in government, and I know it's an ongoing discussion within different departments, but you know, part of, from ISET's point of view, we need to export. We need our marine ocean technology, the high skilled, high quality, you know, generating IP. We need those technologies to be exported, and that's what we want. And that's what we want. That's where we want to help Canada in terms of strengths. And we have a lot of these strengths. So I think it's continuing and pushing and growing those types of businesses. Next slide, please. So the evolution of the shipbuilding sector. Basically, from all that I've learned about shipbuilding, is I would never ever want to own a shipyard. They require large investments in infrastructure and capital investments, and it also requires a very large, highly skilled workforce. And as well, due to vessels' long lifespans, the industry follows cyclical periods of high and low activities. And this was one of the central drivers for the government introducing the National Shipbuilding Strategy in 2010. And so we really want to even out the boom bust cycle. And I mean, you could have a lot of discussion on that and how to do that, but it is something that is not easy. It's quite complicated, and something that is an ongoing discussion, I know, within government of how we can do that. So in addition to supporting jobs, the National Shipbuilding Strategy, or the NSS, gives domestic firms an opportunity to showcase new systems, which is what I was also mentioning about in terms of exporting. You need that reputation domestically as well. So for example, Hepburn has delivered its replenishment at sea system to the Navy for over 35 years, and it has also exported to French, Italian, and Australian navies. So again, to us, we understand it's very clear that domestic opportunities provide a launch pad for companies to prove their products' capabilities. Next slide, please. And again, I'm not an industrial policy expert in general, but I think Marie Chantal mentioned this as well, but with innovation technology, there's, even at the subsectors of every industry. So within marine, like a lot of these technologies that we're creating, innovations, they're cross-cutting, they're being integrated, they're being used in different parts of the marine or ocean economies. They're also being used in other sectors as well. And so that's where you get a really big bang for your buck, and so we really want to drive. I mean, every sector in Canada, every economic sector in the world is being disrupted by innovation. And again, working on space industrial policy, we see a lot of that happening right now in terms of, and again, it's overflows into the marine sector when you're looking at what different satellite capabilities are. So it is really big, and it is really huge. And but also, it's really important that I think that we want to acknowledge the government. We recognize that the wealth of research initiatives and organizations that exist in the maritime domain across Canada, and the list you see on here is not exhaustive. And the ocean economy activities are becoming more and more integrated, and the technologies, as I mentioned, are being applied in multiple subsectors. And I think anyone who's a bit familiar with incubators or with clusters and networking, this is essential. And so we've seen some, we had some really great world-leading success stories in Canada, predominantly around our coast, but where we have these different clusters of academia, industry, and associations, and try to drive and find problems to these challenges. So we're not doing this alone. We can't do this alone. And so again, this is just kind of an overview of what's going on out there. Next slide, please. So looking internationally very quickly, these are just excerpts. They're just a sampling of what's going on internationally. When we look at, from a government point of view, when we look at the shipbuilding, industrial marine sector, we say, okay, where are the opportunities in this? Well, Canada, as Chantal said, we don't build huge container ships, nor are we probably ever going to, most likely. There's a lot of different trade barriers in Canada, or sorry, not in Canada, a lot of different trade barriers internationally. For example, many of you are probably familiar with the Jones Act. If you're not, it's goods shipped between the US ports must be transported on ships that are built, owned, and operated by US citizens. So that's just one example where there's protectionist measures taken. And so Canada, we do the same thing. Any kind of trade agreements, generally we exclude shipbuilding. We want to protect it for a variety of reasons. And then also, looking internationally, there are other international drivers that are changing the way that we do business and the way that we are doing shipbuilding. So the IMO regulations regarding emissions and autonomous vessels present new opportunities in the ocean economy that align with the government's priorities of again, for us, advancing digitization, as well as our plan to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. So it's a bit of back and forth. We're, internationally, not just IMO, but internationally, there's a lot of drive towards reducing emissions, for greater autonomy and autonomous vessels. And we're also driving that in Canada as well. Because again, I think that, Canada, we have the ability to become a world leader in these areas. Next slide, please. So currently, how is the government of Canada supporting domestic economic growth and trying to help different innovative and technological developments within the shipbuilding sector? So obviously we have the National Shipbuilding Strategy that provides long-term stable demand for many shipyards within Canada. In conjunction with those, we have the Industrial and Technological Benefits Policy, where shipyards are required to do a certain amount of their business activities within Canada and through Canadian firms or otherwise, as well as we also have the National Value Proposition. The NSS value proposition, and where shipyards with large vessel contracts are required to invest equal to 0.5% of the value of their NSS contracts into 3 priority areas. So it's HR development, technological development, and industrial development. And we've seen some very cool projects happening as a result of that. And so again, it's trying to grow certain targeted areas in the ocean sector. ISED also has SIF, the Strategic Innovation Fund. We have Innovation Solutions Canada, where they have a few different programs where there's a accelerated growth services and other ones to pick different firms in sectors that have potential to grow. We also have the superclusters, as I'm sure many of you are aware of as well. And as well, as Marie-Chantal mentioned, we're also developing a blue economy strategy. And again, we have those more traditional approaches as well. So we have, under the ISED portfolio, there's regional development agencies, there's trade commissioners. And so I think I'd say that in this right now, in this time, there's a ton happening in the ocean sector. It's in the ocean economy. I've never seen so much momentum behind this in government. So I think right now is a time that we need to, as all together in collaboration, try and jump on this bandwagon and push it as hard and as far as we can to advance some of this work, because the National Shipbuilding Strategy, the Ocean Protection Plan, the Blue Economy Strategy, the Ocean Supercluster, there's probably a few more that are related. I mean, these are all different. They have maybe varying objectives, but they all are in the marine space. And so it is very important, I believe, that that we continue down this and drive this as hard and push. And so there's international momentum, there's domestic momentum, which is also really important. Next slide, please. So Marie Chantal also had this as well, but basically, and this is not really news to anybody, but the government of Canada is continuing to prioritize digitization. It's fundamental, it's necessary for a competitive economy. It's cross-sectoral, it's disrupting all sectors, decarbonization, and then also just general maritime oversight protection. And so, again, I mentioned earlier other priorities. They're linked back to Transport Canada's Ocean Protection Plan, and again, just improving maritime safety, improving environmental initiatives. But I think the really big ones are the net zero emissions and pushing innovation and technology. Next slide, please. So I think it was last year. COVID in general gives me a bit of memory loss, I think. But it was last year that we did a scan of different innovation and technology key trends in Canada and within the marine sector. And we found that generally it's data, it's sensors, it's more information, just collecting, acquiring, and using more information. And so I think that I guess the key takeaway from this slide, from the way we view it, is that basically there's a lot of different technological advances. There's different devices. But basically they all go on the ship. And so, for example, research vessels have sensors to obtain and collect data to make, and that also helps to make better decisions. Maritime management systems use big data to deliver decision-making ability to vessel operators. Uncrewed surface vessels and other systems are adopting varying degrees of autonomy. Digital twin technology is transforming shipbuilding, right from design all the way to in-service support. And then there's other really interesting innovation and technologies that are coming in that are cross-sectoral, again, looking at, for example, additive manufacturing. So how can we, if a ship, if something breaks in the middle of the ocean, they can just print a new one. And there's a ton of these different, or even to improve training. I know that labor and skills are always a bit of a hot topic in the marine sector, and making sure we have enough people going into jobs in this sector to meet the demand. And so how do we train more efficiently and to encourage more safety? And so there's a lot of new and innovative technologies that are percolating up, and so which is really exciting. And so hopefully that we can get some of these onto some Government of Canada vessels and try and do that as well in a safe way. Next slide, please. So in terms of opportunities, ones that we've identified, there's emerging and continuous policies. So in the last maybe 10, 15 years, there's been a lot more thinking around Arctic sovereignty, maritime monitoring, and then looking at that obviously within the context of COVID, supply chain resilience, and which is extremely important in this current context. And there's, in terms of technology, data acquisition and transmission is driving sensor and software development, and functionality is improving drastically. In terms of the economy, cost and resource savings will influence how vessels are built and operated. Additionally, venture capitalists assign less risk to investment projects that are pursued through industry clusters. So again, I think the organic evolution of the ocean economy we're doing the right things. And then environmental, environment is a very hot topic right now. Domestic targets and international regulations are driving technology development, and there is also evidence that environmental sustainable investments are outperforming other market indexes. And again, I think that even looking at yesterday at the fall economic statement, there's a lot of drive toward having more build back better, I think is what they used in the previous announceables, and how do we do that in a green way. So, but again, highlighting everything with the lens with COVID, it's I think we are trying to take hold and trying to use COVID as a chance to reshape our industry. And hopefully we can leverage that as well. Next slide, please. So finally, this is, I don't want to say it's an underwhelming vision for Canada, but again, but basically, I think this is not really a surprise for anyone, but we definitely want to continue going down the way of Canada's waterways are connected, instrumented, and autonomous. Again, looking at driving more innovation, more technology, with greater use of sensors, having global maritime management systems that enable oversight, and then also mass, for greater efficiency and lower risk. That meets also safety objectives in the longer term. It's the way we're going, and I think that it's the way that in general, ISED and the Government of Canada view our overall economy going is being and having more, more connected, more technology advancements, and to make things more efficient. And as well, I don't think it's entirely separate, but Canada's vessels advance green technologies to support emissions reductions. I've seen actually a fair bit in the news in the last few days about low emission or zero emission vessels. I think it's fantastic. I think it's, maybe that's not going to be the vision for the next 10 to 20 years, and, maybe we'll be different classes of vessels, but and there's also incremental ways to improve that as well. And so how do we do that in a safe way? If we have, Navy vessels or Coast Guard vessels, they need to have, how do we test new technologies, and how do we have that and certify and in a way that's timely and can be part of the procurement process. So, and again, I think mentioned on the slide as well is even from the design phase, having digital twin technologies, different new propulsion technologies, and again, mass looking at finding cost-effective, ideally, and environmental limitations. So I think that's it for me. I hope that was somewhat interesting, and we'll set the stage for fruitful discussion.
Thank you so much, Lindsay.